or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Janice Marie Hunt, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Sunday, June 7th, 2026 issue of the New York Times business section on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. She confessed to fraud. The board kept her as CEO. It should have been scandalous enough that there was a $283 million fraud. But then the next shoe dropped. The company's board of directors waited 3 months to tell investors about it. Not only that, the fraudster was allowed to stay on as chief executive during that time. The company had forced her to resign and disclosed the mess only after getting wind of a criminal investigation. Not long ago, CAASTLE looked like a high-flying startup. It started as an online clothing rental company geared toward plus-size women and later began selling its platform to other fashion retailers. The chief executive, Christine Hunsaker, had the vision. Her co-founder, Jaswinder Pal Singh, had the software chops. Together, they wooed prominent investors including Bill Ackman and Henry Kravis. Castle raised more than $600 million, and at its height in 2018, it was valued at $1.25 billion. In spring 2025, Castle disclosed that Ms. Hunsaker had been widely overstating its financial results. Castle soon went bankrupt. This March, Ms. Hunsaker pleaded guilty to securities fraud. Investors alongside Castle's bankruptcy trustee are scrambling to recover whatever money they can. They claim in several lawsuits that Castle's board, which for much of its history had only 3 directors, one of whom was Ms. Hunsaker, failed to notice obvious warning signs of her fraud and then botched its response. The lawsuit shined a light on the actions of Ms. Singer, a longtime professor in Princeton's prestigious computer science department. In October 2024, as investors started asking questions about the company's finances, Mr. Singh sold $6 million of Castle stock back to it, according to a complaint filed in March by the bankruptcy trustee George Miller. Mr. Miller is seeking to claw that back on behalf of Castle's creditors. After Ms. Hunsaker confessed to her misconduct in December 2024, Mr. Singh played a key part in keeping it from investors and letting her stay on as chief executive, according to the lawsuits. One suit claims that Mr. Singh was romantically involved with Ms. Hunsaker 2 decades ago and that because of their close relationship, he had a strong personal interest in protecting her. Mr. Singh hasn't been charged with a crime, and there is no evidence that he had prior knowledge of or participated in the fraud. It was a co-founder and major shareholder who rejoined the board after several years away from the company in hopes of stabilizing the company, contributing months of uncompensated effort, and voluntarily providing capital to pay employees and help preserve stakeholder value for everyone, Matthew Hiltzik, a spokesman for Mr. Singh, said in a statement. The board, with the advice of legal counsel, reasonably exercised its business judgment regarding available options and communications with shareholders. Mr. Hiltzik did not respond to questions about the $6 million stock sale or the accusations of a romantic affair. Ms. Sicker has admitted to defrauding Castle's investors out of $283 million. She declined to comment through her lawyer, Michael Levy. Mr. Levy is expected to argue at her sentencing hearing this summer that she deserves a lighter sentence because of several factors, including a 2017 brain injury, according to a person close to Ms. Hunsaker, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because the case is pending. Ms. Hunsaker started providing falsified financial documents to investors in 2019, according to her plea agreement, but Castle's board didn't find out anything was amiss until 2024. That November, someone managing Mr. Kravitz's investment raised alarms with John Hennessy, a director who also Alphabet's board chair and is known as the godfather of Silicon Valley. A week later, Mr. Hennessy declared that not only was he no longer on Castle's board, but he had actually resigned 3 years earlier, a claim undercut by the fact that he had been openly participating in board activities through 2024, Mr. Miller said in his complaint. Mr. Hennessy has had a long and distinguished career. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Hennessy did not engage in or condone any wrongdoing and was himself a victim. Kaz Hashmi, Mr. Hennessy's lawyer, said in a statement. Mr. Hennessy will address the claims against him in the pending case at the appropriate time. Without Mr. Hennessy, Castle's board had only one voting member aside from Ms. Hunsaker, a Tokyo-based asset manager named Scott Kalan. In December 2024, Ms. Hunsaker delivered a bombshell, admitting on a video call with Mr. Kalan and Mr. Singh that she had been doctoring financial documents. In the days after, Mr. Kalan asked Ms. Hunsaker's resignation. Mr. Miller said, she did not step down as chief executive. According to the complaint, she did agree to leave the company's board, but only if Mr. Singh, who at the time had no official role in the company, took her place. Unable to outvote her, Mr. Kalan complied. As the other board member, I had no options to remove Christine from these roles unilaterally, he said in a statement. Like Netflix, but for clothes. 2 decades earlier, Ms. Hunsaker and Mr. Singh shared in a startup triumph. Ms. Hunsaker, a Princeton graduate, was president and chief operating officer of Right Media, an advertising metrics firm. Mr. Singh, who has spent years at Princeton studying how to make large-scale computing systems more efficient, was a technology advisor to the company. In 2007, Yahoo acquired Right Media, netting Ms. Hunsaker a hefty payout. In 2011, Ms. Hunsaker and Mr. Singh teamed up again, this time to create a clothing startup. Gwenny B, as the company was first called, had a business model similar to that of Netflix for DVDs, according to a promotional slide deck from the time. Customers would pay a fixed fee, say $79 per month, to rent 3 garments at a time with the option to buy the ones they liked. Like Rent the Runway, Gwenny B's goal was to offer customers a way to experience a piece of clothing before buying it. Ms. Hunsaker also positioned it as a technology company collecting vast amounts of data that it could use to solve logistical problems in merchandising, buying, and inventory management. Despite their ties to Wright Media, Ms. Hunsaker and Mr. Singh were still viewed as inexperienced in the startup world. To attract investors, they leaned on their guild resume and their community ties. When a founder lacks easy access to money from big venture funds, you use your unconventional networks, your school, your ethnicity to raise funds, said Alok Sama, SoftBank's former president. Mr. Sama passed on investing, but Mr. Singh found other takers, tapping connections among affluent South Asians in the Hamptons, where he owned a house, along with his circle from Princeton to help raise money. In 2014, Mr. Singh became a trustee at the prestigious Dalton School in Manhattan. The billionaire investor Bill Ackman, whose children had attended Dalton, learned of the company after meeting him at a school event. Not long after he invested, Mr. Ackman currently owns substantially less than 1% of the company, his spokesman said. Mr. Singh told other investors that the company also received a big investment from the renowned venture capitalist Jim Breyer. A spokesman for Mr. Breyer declined to comment. Ms. Hunsaker was an impassioned marketer and fundraiser for the company. In 2016, she appeared as a judge on Project Runway, fashion startup boosting her profile. Soon, hedge funds, venture capitalists, and private equity moguls like Mr. Kravis were seeking to invest. There were no referrals. Troubling signs were present from the start. Though Gwenny B regaled investors with pictures of his warehouse in Ohio and drip fed them happy customer comments, it did not provide investors quarterly or yearly financial performance updates in its first years, according to several of them. Toward the end of 2017, Ms. Hunsaker told friends that a heavy bathroom mirror had fallen on her at home, causing a head injury that led to recurrent headaches and lapse in concentration. Worries grew within the firm about the business model, which relied on subscribers to refer new customers. We were all talking about it. There were no referrals, said Kaya Majamadar, who joined Quinny B as Miss Hunsaker's apprentice in mid 2017. Plus size women didn't want to refer other plus size women because you are essentially calling other women fat. So in 2018, Gwenny B pivoted, changing its name to Castle, with the first four letters standing for clothing as a service, rather than catering to a narrow segment of the market and focusing on consumers. Castle's goal was to serve as the technology and logistics platform for a wide range of fashion brands. Big names like Ann Taylor, Express, and Vince signed on, prompting favorable headlines in the trade press. Mr. Singh's role in the company during the years that followed is unclear. Corporate filings with the state of Delaware show he left Castle's board in 2017. He later told investors that he had stepped back from the company that same year. But at least four investors who told the New York Times that they had invested in Gwenny B because of Mr. Singh's technology acumen said they were never informed of his departure. Emails and marketing materials show that the company continued to make it seem as though he was still involved. For example, in an August 2019 email to investors, Castle said that Mr. Singh was leading a highly strategic and complex effort to explore ways of maximizing retailer loyalty and rewards programs on the Castle platform. An investor presentation listed Mr. Singh as part of Castle's leadership team, describing him as a co-founder. And some of the emails Castle sent to investors continue to be signed Best, Christine, and JP, Mr. Singh's spokesman. Mr. Hiltzik said that, to our understanding, these were occasional form emails that used an old template. Ms. Hunsicker offered a sunny outlook about Castle even in the face of the COVID pandemic, which seemed like an ominous moment, since people suddenly had far less need for a variety of outfits. Steve Shapiro, a former Tiger management analyst who invested in Castle, remembers thinking, this has got to kill them. But when he spoke to Miss Hunsicker, she sounded positive. He said, so, no, we're doing okay, really. He recalled her saying, this is not going to impact revenue as much as you think. Mr. Singh, too, was upbeat. All good. He texted one investor in late April 2020. Retailers see this as where they make profit and money. Castle was still signing deals, he wrote. Mr. Hiltzik did not respond to a question about the message. In the fall of 2023, somebody described only as Investor A, in the complaint filed in March by Mr. Miller, the bankruptcy trustee contacted Castle's auditor, BDO, asking it to confirm the authenticity of a Castle audit. A few days later, BDO terminated its relationship with the company. It turned out that Ms. Hunsicker had sent of Investor A fake audit bearing a forged BDO signature, according to Mr. Miller. Ms. Hunsicker then moved to negotiate a settlement in which Castle would agree to repurchase Investor A's holding for cash if Investor A promised not to disclose the forged audit, Mr. Miller's complaint states. Investor A agreed to the settlement, according to Mr. Miller. Ms. Hunsicker continued to proceed as if all was well with the business. In early 2024, she struck a deal that looked like a way for Castle to expand. A new company called P180, set up by the apparel executive Brendan Hoffman, announced it would buy stakes in fashion brands and boost their profitability by using Castle's e-commerce platform and drawing on its subscriber base. That fall, Ms. Hunsicker attracted investor scrutiny again, and this time it would lead to her undoing. It came from Jed Linsner, whose firm Stonecroft Management handles Mr. Kravitz's personal investments. Ms. Hunsicker had lunch with Mr. Linsner and two of his associates at Stonecroft on October 8th. Around that time, Castle wired Mr. Singh $6 million to buy back some of his shares, according to Mr. Miller. A few days later, Castle brought back a further $1.75 million in shares from a trust established for the benefit of Mr. Singh's wife, Mr. Miller said. It is unclear what was said at the lunch, but 3 weeks later, Mr. Singh, Ms. Hunsicker's office to view Castle's most recent financial audit in person. He detailed what happened next in a November 27th email to Mr. Hennessy, citing in Mr. Miller's lawsuit and obtained by the Times. Mr. Linsner wrote that he noticed that page 7 of the audit was missing, and I received an unsatisfactory explanation from Christine as to why. He added that he had separately learned that BDO didn't have a record of issuing the audit and that Castle was no longer an active client. Ms. Hunsicker offered to buy back Mr. Kravitz's shares. Mr. Linsner wrote, unlike Investor A, Stonecroft declined her offer according to two people with direct knowledge who spoke on condition of anonymity because of pending litigation. Mr. Hennessy forwarded Mr. Lenzner's email to Mr. Collin, the other director, calling it worrisome and adding, "This is news to me and not sure what JP knows." A week later, Stonecroft had a call with Mr. Hennessy and Mr. Collin in which the missing page was discussed. Mr. Miller's complaint said, 3 days after that, on December 6th, my birthday, Mr. Hennessy sent a letter to Castle's general counsel claiming that his board term had actually ended 3 years earlier. To avoid any ambiguity, please consider this a confirmatory resignation effective April 12, 2021. Mr. Hennessy wrote, Mr. Miller's complaint claims that Mr. Hennessy had attended board meetings and held himself out to outsiders as a director of Castle through 2024. Ms. Hunsaker's confessional call with Mr. Collin and Mr. Singh came on December 8th. She told them she still believed there was a path to profitability if she had more time, according to Mr. Miller's complaint. Then she stayed on as chief executive and agreed to leave the board only if Mr. Singh replaced her is unusual in itself. The move likely to draw new scrutiny because an amended civil suit filed in April by P180 claimed that Ms. Hunsaker and Mr. Singh were romantically involved decades earlier, citing Ms. Hunsaker's ex-husband. P180 has suggested in legal filings that Mr. Singh's personal relationship with her compromised his ability to fulfill his duty to Castle. Both Ms. Hunsaker and Mr. Singh have disputed P180's lawsuit. Mr. Singh's lawyer, Richard Boone, in a statement called it a desperate attempt by P180 to avoid paying $11.2 million it owes to Castle's bankruptcy estate, and said that Mr. Singh never had any relationship with P180, but neither has responded specifically to the allegations of an affair. The new two-person board of Mr. Singh and Mr. Collin prohibited Ms. Hunsaker from taking actions on Castle's behalf. Yet, she continued falsifying financial statements to Castle investors and sold about $10 million of her personal shares to existing investors, according to the Securities and Exchange Commission, which later filed a lawsuit against her. Mr. Singh tried to cash out of an unspecified amount of Castle stock after Ms. Hunsaker's confession, but was unable to, according to Mr. Miller's complaint. It is unclear why. In mid-March, Castle learned that a criminal investigation of the company was underway, finally prompting Ms. Hunsaker's resignation. Soon afterward, Castle's board told investors the board presented a new audit obtained by the Times that showed Castle was in an enormous hole, though the company had reported net revenues of nearly $440 million to some investors in fiscal year 2023. The real number was only $15.7 million. In a call to arrange $3 million in a financing to avoid Castle's liquidation, Mr. Singh portrayed himself as a savior returning to rescue the company. Our objective was to protect and maximize shareholder value, Mr. Singh declared, according to a recording of all that obtained by the Times. There was no shareholder value because the whole thing was a fraud, one investor, Jonathan Webb, shot back. I just don't understand how people wouldn't mention to investors what was going on behind the scenes for 3+ months. It just doesn't make sense. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times business section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. 80% of theater goers under age 35 for the hit horror film Backrooms. A psychological horror movie from a 20-year-old director and YouTuber has become a box office phenomenon. Backrooms brought in $82 million in North America last weekend, with roughly 86% of the audience under the age of 35, according to PostTrack, a film industry research service. About 44% of the audience was under 21, and the movie outperformed analysis projections that it would collect $60 million in its first weekend. The success of Backrooms, made with a budget of $10 million and promoted with a low-cost, mostly digital marketing campaign, shows that online fame can translate to theater success. The New York Times' Brooks Barnes reported, the debut was the biggest in the history of its studio, A24 by a factor of 3, and the director was the youngest to clinch the top box office slot. When the film's director, Kane Parsons, was 16, he released a popular short called The Backrooms Found Footage and follow-ups on YouTube. By the time he turned 17, he had signed on with A24 to make a feature-length version of the project, the Times' Cal Buchanan reported. The second-place movie in North America theaters last weekend was Obsession, another project from a young, first-time filmmaker which has sold more than $110 million in tickets since its May release. 78% of that movie's opening weekend audience was younger than 35, according to PostTrack. It's the start of a gigantic shift, Stephen Galloway, the dean of Chapman University's film school, told Mr. Barnes. These are the cinematic insurgents of our era. So far this year, stocks were up. S&P 500 plus 7.9%. Mortgage rates went up. Bankrate.com 30-year fixed 6.59% plus 0.39 points. Jobless claims went down. 4-week moving average a negative 1.9%. A legal basis was needed to rebuild Trump's tariff wall, and this was a convenient way to do it. Steve Okarn, chief executive of APEC Advisors, a geopolitical consulting firm on the Trump administration's new tariff proposals. She is murdering 60 Minutes. Scott Pelley, who has since been fired as a 60 Minutes correspondent, referring in a tense meeting to Bari Weiss, the editor-in-chief of CBS News. Beer needs a win here. Dave Williams, president of Bump Williams Consulting, on the alcohol industry's hope for greater consumption during the World Cup this summer. How to handle a manipulative creep. I work in a role that was specifically created to support a department head who's not my direct manager. Over the past few months, our once close professional relationship has shifted in an uncomfortable way. He became upset that I spent time socially with other coworkers outside the office but not him, and told me he felt hurt and rejected that I maintain boundaries between my work and personal life. I repeatedly explained that those boundaries are important and that I do not want the relationship to become more intimate. Instead of accepting this, he began disclosing problems in his home life. When I was considering a role working with another leader at the company, he told me that if I did that, he couldn't protect me. I told him that his language and behavior felt creepy, romantically charged, disrespectful, and inappropriate. During a subsequent intense late night conversation, he said he hated walking on eggshells around me and even said he wanted to quit. I don't want to overreact or destroy my career. I also don't want either of us to quit. In an ideal world, I would like to repair the working relationship. But I also feel constantly on edge, emotionally burdened, and undignified. I'm struggling with several questions. Am I right to view this as sexual harassment or at least a serious boundary violation? How do you maintain professionalism with someone after they've made the relationship emotionally coercive? If it's even possible, what would healthy repair look like in a situation like this? You should talk to a lawyer. What you're experiencing is sexual harassment by any practical measure. The department head has created a hostile work environment and implied a quid pro quo threat. But I'm not qualified to say whether you could win a lawsuit on that basis. Many employment lawyers offer free initial consultations and they can make an assessment once given all of the relevant facts. What I'm qualified to tell you is that this guy is a manipulative creep. While manipulative creep is not a legal category and the pronouncement of an advice columnist doesn't carry any judicial sanction, I hope that my verdict can at least help you get over your fear of overreacting. Your colleague has engaged in a campaign of emotional coercion and unwanted intimacy that has left you anxious and exhausted. And you're trying to envision healthy repair. If anything, I'm worried you're underreacting. The only way to maintain professionalism in the face of this controlling, sad sack routine, one that would make even the most toxic emo teenager blush, is with militant patrolling of boundaries. Ignore or refuse to entertain questions or conversations not directly relevant relative to your work. And limit your communications to work hours, no matter how much emotional blackmail is threatened. And please, I beg you, do not have any more intense late night conversations with this man. Try to keep your conversations public or retrievable in text and email, especially if other people can be looped in or CC'd. Documentation may persuade him to be more respectful of your boundaries. More important, it will be useful in your legal consultation and in any conversations. And there should be further conversations. Reading about the lines, I get the sense that some of your caution around understanding the situation as harassment is born out of a desire to avoid rocking the boat at the office. But you already had this guy a shot at a diplomatic, healthy repair, and he threw a tantrum. The only choice he's leaving you is boat rocking. This may be unappealing given the stress you're already going through, but this guy is not going to come to his senses on his own. Your priorities should be your health, sanity, and career, not workplace harmony. That the former might well come at the cost of the latter. It is a problem your harasser has created, not you. I'm in a recruitment hell. I know it's an employer's market, but at one point, is it acceptable to push back on genuinely bad treatment during recruitment? I've been in a hiring process for a senior nonprofit role for more than 3 months, and the external recruiter has been unprofessional from the start. I completed 5 interviews, and for the final round, produced a full presentation that took 4 solid days to prepare. Hmm. Uncomp- uncompensated. That's no small acts of anyone's time. Throughout, the recruiter went weeks without contact, failed to respond when I followed up, and at one point sent me an email clearly meant for a candidate in a different search. It's now been 4 weeks since my final interview with no word. I'm fairly certain I'm being ghosted. Hmm. I am furious. The time and thought that I invested deserve a minimum, a response. Writing a breezy just checking in email feels wholly inadequate. But I also don't want to burn a bridge in a small sector where everyone knows everyone. Is there ever a moment when a job seeker has the standing to name bad behavior directly? And if so, how? Hmm. One feature of writing a work advice column is that a huge number of questions I get asked are effectively a version of exactly how much crap am I obligated to eat here. Unfortunately, the answer never actually is none. Wage labor all but guarantees a certain amount of indignity and insult, but even in an employer's market, it also is never unlimited. Just because you may need to work with this recruiter in the future doesn't mean you shouldn't stand up for yourself. The likelihood of interacting again makes it more important that you establish that this behavior is unacceptable. With clear diplomatic language, you have a sense of self worth to maintain, especially through the abasement of a new job. The good news is that there's a vast gulf of possibilities for a response between an obscurus, just checking in, and a scorched earth condemnation. At the very least, you should email and ask if a decision has been made, mentioning that it's been a month since your last interview, but I would be slightly more direct and tell the recruiter in crotched professional language that you're not sure how to square the amount of effort you put into this application process with the lack of communication on their end. You don't need to burn the bridge, but you don't need to let them trample you on their way across it either. Hmm, I like that. The stench, my God, the stench. I work in a small medical office in a large building. We have a private bathroom in our suite for patients and staff, and there are public restrooms down the hall as well. There are only 3 of us working in the office, and my desk is closest to the restroom. At least once a day, one of my colleagues will use the restroom for number two. The smell afterward is genuinely abhorrent. It's often so bad that I hear patients curse as they are going into the restroom. There are deodorizers in the bathroom, but if she's using them, they do absolutely nothing to cover up the stench. Please help. I aspire to not work from my colleague's colon. How do I have this conversation tactfully without alienating her or becoming an HR violation? Hmm. The trick here is to wage a universal movement toward bathroom improvement rather than a targeted campaign against your colleague. By which I mean, don't have a conversation with her tactfully or not. Have a conversation with all your employees, with all your colleagues, and propose that the whole office commit to using the bathroom down the hallway for number two. Blame it on your sensitive nose or fib and say that some patients have complained, but don't single anyone out and make it clear that you too will be bound by the new rule. At the same time, buy new bottle tested deodorizers for the bathroom to underline the efforts. Before you go, spray spray like Purpura or are widely recommended by long suffering spouses everywhere. And molecular deodorizers like Zero Odor and Zorbex are used by hospitals, assisting living facilities. Draw attention to yourself in your bathroom improvement project, and you'll ensure your colleague feels no unwanted attention herself. Demand destruction. As the war in Iran has stymied traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, demand for oil has fallen, and industry watchers and oil executives have started to fret about demand destruction, referring to the sustained loss of demand for a commodity caused by high prices. In March, Goldman Sachs analysts said that oil prices hitting $100 a barrel or more, which has happened periodically since Israel and the United States attacked Iran on February 28th, was associated with more significant oil demand destruction. In April, the International Energy Agency, which said it expected oil demand to shrink by 1.5 million barrels per day this quarter, noted that it anticipated that demand destruction will spread as scarcity and higher prices persist. Demand destruction is not a technical economic term, said Catherine Wolfram, a professor of energy economics at the Sloan School of Management at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She's seen it used among oil market traders and those on the industry's financial side. In the short term, she said, people just can't afford these higher prices and so are being forced to find alternatives, such as calling into meetings on Zoom to avoid driving or taking vacations closer to home. In some countries, governments are intervening to reduce energy usage. South Korea, for one, has advised people to ride bicycles and take shorter showers and has government agencies to take their vehicles off the road one weekday per week. In the longer term, changes that are made now, including turning to renewable energy sources, may permanently dampen demand for oil. Anyone who bought an electric vehicle is definitely happy to have done so. Dr. Wolfram noted EVs make up only a small portion of cars in the United States, but many Americans say they are open to buying them. But Mr. Wolfram asks that to her, the most worrying thing is the demand that's not destroyed, the purchase of gasoline or yet fuel or diesel that people still have to make some things make sense, much higher prices. The last example of sustained demand destruction, said Ryan Kellogg, a professor on energy policy at the University of Chicago, came during the 1970s energy crisis. He reduced petroleum demand for a long period and led to the adoption of fuel economy standards in the United States. Oil prices since then have been volatile at times. They scored in 2007 and 2008 as global demand surged and crashed at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 set off another spike. Now, prices are volatile again. If they continue raising again, If they continue rising, behaviors may continue to shift. Consumers tend to be quite attentive to first digits. Dr. Wolfram noted they may react more strongly to a gasoline price of $5.01 than $4.99. Already, some lower income consumers have cut back slightly on gas, according to research from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Even if the Strait of Hormuz reopens soon, prices may not simply return to normal, partly because oil prices are also tied to other factors. The Iranians have bombed refineries that produce gasoline and jet fuel, so there's been some physical destruction that will take a lot longer to repair, Dr. Wolfram said. People just can't afford these higher prices and so are being forced to find alternatives, she reflected. Hopefully, those alternatives are palatable. Corporate America's skyrocketing pay gap. Executive compensation accelerates and widens while rank and file workers lag. Even among the nation's best paid corporate chiefs, Elon Musk stands alone. His compensation last year was a mind boggling $132.3 billion. That's not just 2.5 million times what the typical Tesla employee made. It's 153 times the compensation of the second highest paid chief executive. Dylan Field, who heads Figma, an online design platform, was running up to Mr. Musk in the rankings, but in terms of wealth created, he was way behind his pay. $864.4 million was a mere rounding error for Mr. Musk. These astonishing figures come from the latest annual survey of the highest paid chief executives conducted for the New York Times by the research firm Equilar. The study found that 7 other chief executives of public companies had paydays last year of at least $100 billion more than ever before. Median pay for the 100 highest paid chief executives in publicly traded companies reached $39.4 million, a new peak and a leap of 35.8% in just 1 year. As an editor and as a columnist, I've seen involved in these Equilar surveys since they started in 2007. They have always shown that chief executives in the United States are exceedingly well paid, but lately the trend is starker. Right after Mr. Field in the latest ranking was Shaka Mitra of Welltower, a real estate investor trust that focuses on health care with compensation of $821 million. Welltower shareholders last month disapproved of that pay package in a rare negative vote. One critic called it an egregiously management friendly transfer of wealth from shareholders, but the say on pay vote was non binding. A vast majority of such measures are approved at public companies every year. Fair pay. In 2018, the Securities and Exchange Commission put out standard guidelines requiring publicly traded companies to compare executive compensation with the pay of a median worker, a person right in the middle of the pay distribution. That year, Equilar found that at the 100 companies with the highest paid executives, the pay ratio was 334 to 1. The level bounced around over the next few years, topping out at 348. What we saw last year was an extraordinary leap all the way to 475. The expansion of compensation packages is accelerating radically just in time for Mr. Musk's next big venture, the initial public offering of his rocket and satellite maker, SpaceX. That company is aiming for a valuation of $1.8 trillion. Mr. Musk owns around 50% of the company's shares. The sky is no longer the limit. Shareholder returns. Equilar has computed that median shareholder return for companies with the top paid chief executives for each year of the survey going back to 2011. The average was 14.6%, about half a point better than the S&P 500's annualized return for that period, including dividends. Investors have benefited and so have workers if they held shares of top companies in their retirement accounts. Considering executive pay purely as an employee may give you a different perspective. Bosses are usually paid more. Most workers are okay with that within limits. Peter F. Drucker, the economist management guru and Wall Street Journal columnist, said it felt about right when chief executives received up to 10 or 12 times what workers earned, and he said chief executives should voluntarily limit their pay, keeping it no higher than 20 times what the rank and the file earned. Disclosure: here at the New York Times, the pay ratio is 49 to 1, the company's proxy says. The typical pay disparity is now more than 20 times the level that Mr. Drucker, who died in 2005, considered the outer limit for public decency. And Mr. Musk's compensation is so far beyond the old guidelines that it's hard to comprehend it. It's hardly surprising that proposals for wealth taxes have been spreading across the country. For example, the 2026 Billionaire Tax Act on the ballot in California in November calls for a one-time levy of 5% on the combined personal and business wealth of billionaires. And in July, New York City will begin phasing in a new tax on luxury second homes, which was enacted at the behest of Mayor Zoe Mamdani, who has vowed to tax the rich. We'll see. Up, up, and away. At the nation's biggest public corporations, however, most investors have been willing to focus on rising share prices rather than on executive pay packages. Mr. Musk provided that at Tesla. Before his latest award from the company, the biggest ever recorded by Equilar, was also at Tesla. It was granted in 2018 and was valued at the time at $2,284,884,884. Oh my goodness, staggering as at some seen, it did not come close to the award's actual value. It was structured so Tesla would have to reach highly ambitious milestones for Mr. Musk to receive any of it. But the company achieved them, and by Tuesday, the 2018 award was worth $127.7 billion, according to Courtney Yu, Director of Research at Equilar, including all the shares that Mr. Musk already owns. His current wealth from Tesla amounts to $301 billion. That doesn't include the latest compensation package, which won't be vested and fully available to him for years, but is now already worth roughly $178 billion because of stock appreciation, Mr. Yu said. Elon Musk's pay package is so far beyond the old guidelines that it's hard to comprehend it. In addition, Equilar calculated Mr. Musk's wealth from SpaceX based on the valuation that the company was seeking in its IPO, including shares he owns now and those he will receive if he hits all the firm's ambitious targets. His SpaceX stake is worth as much as $864 billion. Mr. Musk is well on his way to becoming the world's first trillionaire. He has fought years-long battles to hold on to and expand his great wealth, and lately Mr. Musk has been winning. In 2024, a Delaware court of chancery judge ruled that Tesla shareholders had not been properly informed about how much the 2018 pay package was really worth. By now, they presumptuously know that in 2024 and 2025, shareholders granted him enormous awards. In December, the Delaware Supreme Court restored his rights to the 2018 bonanza and cleared the way for his latest Tesla pay package. Mr. Musk has fortified himself against further court challenges. In 2021, he moved Tesla's legal domicile from Delaware to Texas, where the environment for corporations is more favorable. At SpaceX, which he moved to Texas in 2024, Mr. Musk controls about 85% of the voting shares. It is likely to be even harder for dissident shareholders to overturn his pay packages or decisions. Tesla shares have declined this year, but since its IPO in June 2010, it has returned almost 42% annualized, or more than 26,000% cumulatively, according to FactSet. Mr. Musk has gotten rich, yes, but shareholders have done well too. Pushback. There has been some scattered resistance to high executive awards lately. In addition to the shareholder vote at Welltower, one at Palo Alto Networks failed too. It was the seventh time shareholders had voted against executive compensation at the company since 2015, according to Bloomberg. That was the most in the S&P 500. These votes have merely been advisory. Despite them, Nikesh Arora, Palo Alto Networks chief executive, last year received an award worth $99.7 million. Since he stepped into the top job, he has racked up $494 million in pay, according to Equilar. Mr. Arora has been able to point to his company's superb stock performance. During his tenure, Palo Alto stock has returned 30.6%. Annualized, that's nearly double the total return for the S&P 500. Even so, the proxy advisory firm Institutional Shareholder Services say his pay is high in comparison with other companies. Most say on pay measures pass overwhelmingly, so failing to receive at least 70% of votes is noteworthy. Aside from the two outright negative results, sub 70% tallies occurred at 10 companies in the Equilar survey. These included prominent executives such as Shantanu Narayan of Adobe, Larry Fink of BlackRock, Hock Tan of Broadcom, and Jane Fraser of Citigroup. Ms. Fraser was the highest paid woman in a public traded U.S. company last year. According to the survey, she received an award of $95.8 million. Much of the data in the series of Equilar surveys is available today because of the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010. Its public disclosure requirements, along with say-on-pay votes, were supposed to rein in extravagant rewards for corporate chiefs. For the most part, it hasn't worked out that way, though 2022 was a notable exception. That year was the worst for inflation in a generation. Most stocks in the market took big hits, and executive pay packages fell 5%. But the stock market has been strong this year, and the executive pay is rocketing higher. It's true that enormous accumulations of wealth are becoming a political issue. Nonetheless, as long as a great majority of investors keep prospering, I wouldn't place big bets against the chief executives. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Sunday, June 7th, 2026 issue of the New York Times Business section. We read from the New York Times Business section every Thursday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been Janice Marie Hunt. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the USA Today. Following that at 2 o'clock is episode number 14 of 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin. Stay with us for these.